Hey everybody, it's Eric from epautos.com, your Libertarian car guy, and just thought I'd do a little video here to accompany my article about practical reasons to buy a motorcycle. Of course, everybody knows motorcycles are fun and beautiful to look at, but sometimes you need a rationalization to buy one. And that rationalization is that they're actually pretty practical. And I'm going to just talk about a couple of the bikes that I've got here as cases in point to make the point. It's hard to find any kind of a decent new car for much less than $12,000 or even $10,000. I think the least expensive new car you can buy is probably about $12,000, and that'll get you into a subcompact Hyundai or something along those lines. Most motorcycles, excepting the really elite high-performance sport bikes and dressed-out Harleys, tend to cost less than $10,000 brand new. And it's very easy to find a very decent bike for much less than that, and I'll just give you a couple of cases in point. This is one of my favorite bikes that I've ever owned. It's an '83 Honda Silverwing GL 650, and I found this thing online for $1,400. That plus $400 to have it trucked out to me, so less than $2,000 total in the bike. And when I got it, it only had 12,000 miles on it. That's very unusual, at least in terms of cars. Most low-priced used cars have very high miles. People tend to drive their cars. With motorcycles, what often happens is that the person will buy the bike and then not ride it, and then it will sit, and then some time will go by, and then they'll realize they're not riding it, and then they'll sell it. And by that time, the bike's value is depreciated. Remember, if a bike cost $10,000 when it was new, after 5, 6, 7, 10, or 20 years, its retail value, unless it's an unusual or desirable, particularly desirable bike, its retail value is going to have gone down considerably. So in this case, I was able to get a bike that's basically 2/3, 80% of a Goldwing, which is a full-sized, full-on touring bike with the bags and windshield and everything, for less than $2,000. And it's rock solid, totally reliable, still has relatively low miles on it, and I would not hesitate for a minute to jump on the thing and ride it across the country. Good luck doing that with a $2,000 used car. Bikes also cost not much to keep. As anybody who has a bike knows, with a handful of exceptions like the big Harleys, most bikes, even high-performance sport bikes, will average at least 40 miles per gallon, average. Most cars do not come close to averaging 40 miles per gallon. Some will go 40 on the highway. Very few average that much. Those that do are hybrids, and hybrids are not nearly as fun nor as pretty to look at as these bikes. Even my high-performance sport bike right here, this is a 1200cc Kawasaki sport bike. This bike goes 40, 45 miles per gallon on a gallon of gas. So it's effectively free transportation right now with gas only $2 a gallon. And if gas should rocket back up to 4 or 5, which it could, I'm kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, it will be a way to get around without going broke. And you should know, if you're not into bikes or don't know much about bikes, that if you get into something like that Honda right there in the 650cc-ish range, this one averages 50, 60 miles per gallon, about 54, 55, depending on how I ride it. And that's, again, average. And so that's as good or better than any hybrid car will get. That's pretty spectacular. And if you go down just a little bit, go down to like a 250cc bike, which is a commuter bike, those bikes get 80 to 100 miles per gallon. And if you look at the latest batch of scooters, many of which are effectively motorcycles, they're still classified as scooters, but some of them have 650cc engines, and they're perfectly highway viable. Some of those can get 120 miles per gallon. It's pretty spectacular. The third item is maintenance. Bikes generally are very inexpensive to keep up versus a car. Particularly if you have an air-cooled motorcycle like this one. This is my 76 KZ900. An air-cooled engine, and no new cars have air-cooled engines, does not have a radiator, doesn't have hoses, doesn't have a thermostat. So you never have to deal with any of that. And look here, the engine is literally right here. Everything's very accessible. And that's also true for even the water-cooled bikes, like this one. Changing the oil on a motorcycle is incredibly easy. For one thing, you don't have to jack the bike up to do it, and you don't have to crawl underneath the bike to do it. In most cases, you can do it with the bike just standing there and with a crescent wrench or some very basic hand tools. So you can do it in your garage, you can do it out on your pad, you don't have to go to the dealership to get it done. And that's also true of brake work, which is another common thing that you have to deal with almost any vehicle. Unlike a car, here's my old Trans Am, if I wanted to even look at the brakes on the Trans Am, the first thing that I have to do is jack the car up using a floor jack, and I have to pull the wheel off in order to just look at the rotor and the caliper that's behind the wheel and the tire. On a motorcycle, on the other hand, you got your caliper right here, you got your rotor right here. And typically, replacing the pads is incredibly easy. All you do is remove the two bolts that hold the caliper to the rotor, typically push the thing out, and usually some clips or something similar like that hold the pads in place, and then you just pop in the new pads, put on the new, put the rotor back, put the caliper back on the rotor, and that's it, you're done. Tires, there are only 2 tires on a motorcycle, 4 on most cars, and they tend to be less expensive, and that includes even the high-performance tires. The Michigan Pilot, for example, on my sport bike here is about $100 and something bucks. Whereas something equivalent on a high-performance car might cost $200 or more for one. Now granted, it doesn't last that long, but again, it costs less, and it's something that's much more easy for you to deal with as an owner than with a car. I guess the final thing that I'd like to talk about is the cost to insure. Unless you're in your 20s, a guy, and buy a high-performance sport bike, motorcycles can be very inexpensive to insure. Most of my bikes, even this one, which is now, that's an 03, so it's 13 years old, but most of my bikes cost well under $100 for an entire year, and a few of them only cost about 50 bucks. And that's, of course, for a basic liability-only policy, but it would be stupid to get comprehensive on an older bike that doesn't have a high retail value. So you can really cut down on your insurance costs, and you can really cut down on your operating costs, your maintenance costs, and your purchase costs. So that's a pretty solid roster of rationalizations, legitimate ones, to make yourself feel better about buying something fun and cool like a motorcycle, or making the case to your wife or girlfriend or whatever that you should be buying a motorcycle. Anyway, that's all for today. Thanks for viewing, and come on down to epautos.com for more, and we will catch up with you next.